All right. Well, I would like to welcome all of you. I'm just so excited to be part of this whole academy, and I have thoroughly enjoyed watching all your presentations that have been posted so far. And I will say that I knew a little bit about all your topics, and you really helped connect some dots into making it much more real or making it much more. Makes more sense. So, my name is Dr. Mark DeBrincat, and I'm also known as the Good News Doctor. And I guess for 30 years, my patients kept telling me that I'm the only one that gives them good news on what can be done and how the body can heal itself. Um, and so the name just kind of ended up sticking with me. So I've been a chiropractor for over 30 years. I specialize in brain trauma, spinal trauma, sports injuries, and babies. And so it's been a very wonderful career. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. I have a presentation today to kind of explain to you how we handle and look at the brain. And we can brain map and do all sorts of amazing things to help improve brain health. So, my story has a very interesting side story to it. After just a few years in practice, my wife and I were in this head-on collision, and I had to become my own best patient. And she broke her neck and had to have it replaced. They say 95% of the people with her injuries are paralyzed, or I'm sorry, killed, and the rest are paralyzed. And so she's very fortunate to be alive. I was the passenger in the car. I braced my legs on the dashboard and snapped my pelvis in half, front and back. I ripped the muscles off my legs. I lost a third of my intestines. I shredded my spine in 11 areas, and I was a super hot mess. It took me 17 years to finally get all my abilities back. I tried so many things, and I'm stubborn, so I wouldn't take any medication. I lived 12 years before I even took the first bit of medication because at that point I was just in too much pain and I wasn't getting better. But in the epiphany of it all, I realized that our bodies actually are healing themselves, which obviously we know that. But just because these tissues are damaged doesn't mean that the next version of this tissue down the road has to have the same damage. And so that was my aha moment. And I worked so hard. And finally, it's been 11 years now since I've been out of my wheelchair, off the meds that I was on for about 4 years. I had this computer implanted in my spine, so I just wouldn't feel anything from my chest down. I haven't had to use that in 11 years. I literally was able to move my family out to Colorado, and we spent the last, well, a good 6 years dirt biking and skiing and hiking and golfing and all the things that all my doctors always told me that I would never be able to do again. And so now I'm living in South Florida in Naples and with all my family down here. And we have an amazing clinic, and we have people that come in from all over the country and spend a few days just to see what's going on with them to get that 30,000 foot view. We have a ton of amazing technologies, a lot of the same things you guys are all involved with. And today we're just going to talk about the brain. Um, but it's a really wonderful experience to be able to pull out that Olympian in somebody and make them work really hard and find their breakthrough in their physical, mental, spiritual life of things that just keep holding them down and keeping them stuck in these patterns that are just completely not necessary. And unfortunately, most of the world's just conditioned to I have a symptom, I take something, I mask my symptom, and they're never really trying to find or get to that root cause of why they're not well. And so I know that these two brain systems that we have, you guys also have there. So I'm excited to help you understand a little bit more about how it works, what it is that we see, and the amazing impact we can literally make with people once we take out that big black hole of what's happening in the brain. It's like I spent so many years treating the body, waiting for it to catch up. treating the body, waiting for those nerves to grow. When you're dealing with neurological damage, they're the toughest tissue in the body to recreate, and it takes the longest to grow. So we spend a lot of time waiting and hoping and praying, and nowadays we have so many biohacks that we don't have to wait. It's like aggressive changes, and we expect things to happen almost on a daily basis in a lot of cases. So it's super exciting, and I'm excited to share it with you. So, not knowing everybody's background, I'm going to kind of keep it simple. This is my wife, Christy. And I'm just going to go through some basics of what is the brain, with the brain tissues, and learn a little bit about what it is that we're seeing from the big picture view, and then I can show you real specifically how we do that. So the brain's composed of two different types of tissue. We have your gray matter, which is the outside of your brain. This is the cortex. It's about an inch thick, and it's like the rind on a melon. This is the part of the brain that you control. It's what you think, you say, you feel, you do. It's basically how you experience your life. Now, the inside of your brain, well, that part of your brain, you're able to process about 2,000 bits of data per second for every little morsel of brain tissue. Now, the inside of the brain, it's a little bit more impressive. It allows you to process about 400 million bits of data per second. That's the white matter. And this is the part that's myelinated and it's running all the subconscious and unconscious protocols to keep you alive and to keep you healthy. And you don't have to think about that. It's working regardless of what you're thinking in doing its job. So we can literally see all these fibers, how many of them are connecting to the cortex, or if you've had trauma, some of those get twisted and turned off, some get damaged, some are stretched and come back, and you can still use the superhighway. But when you have different damage and you can't use that superhighway through your brain to communicate, you're having to take the back roads around all the way around your brain. And that is delays, it causes cognitive problems, it creates a whole world of issues. So we can take all the guesswork out and tell you exactly where your strengths are and also where your weaknesses are just based on what those tissues in your brain are doing, how much potential they hold, how much of a charge, electrical charge do they have to send information? Because that's basically their job all day long. Send information. These are the most highly specialized cells in your body. They have the highest oxygen demand, second to the heart. Now, your brain gets about 20% of your blood, but it's only like 2% of your body weight. So we're the only species on the planet that has that ratio because our brain is processing about 300% more information than all the other animals that we have. Now, we have a very highly metabolic activity that creates a lot of oxidative stress. This is like the exhaust coming out of your car. We have little engines called our mitochondria, which I'll teach in a second. And these brain cells have hands down 2 million more per cell than any other cell in your body. So it makes them very vulnerable to toxins, and it also makes them very slow to replicate or to heal themselves. So when it comes down to it, it's all about signaling. Okay, every cell in your body has to signal. Without signaling, nothing else is going to really happen. And it's these synapses that allow that signaling to happen. It's a balance of redox signaling molecules, neurotransmitters, and hormones that get carried across that junction. Now, the redox molecules are the most important because they're cleaning up the catcher's mitts on both sides and actually carrying that hormone or neurotransmitter across that junction. So we talk about energy, we talk about a charge, a potential on our cells. We talk about mitochondria. These are little powerhouses inside our cell, and what you're seeing them make right there is redox signaling molecules. These are like the vowels of the language of our cells. Okay, it's how our cells communicate. We're bioelectrical beings. We're making this as fast as we can and using it as fast as we can. Now, when we do our brain map, we can see something called Brodmann areas. It's basically breaking the brain down into over 80 regions on both sides. And each of these specific regions control very specific things neurologically in your body. So when we see one of these areas that are damaged or out of balance or hold no potential anymore, we can tell you exactly what those symptoms are. It's not that we're mind readers, we just hit start But it is amazing to identify not just where the damage is, but how much damage. How long is this going to take for us to restore potential? It's all about bringing that power back to our cells. Now, when we're sleeping, we're recharging our cells, and then our brain's going to just send information all day long until the battery runs out. And then the brain cell still looks pretty, but it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there, much like your car in the garage that you're not driving right now. It's still a car, but it's not functioning or doing anything like a car would do. And so it's all about that potential. So, what does homeostasis look like in our brains, in our bodies? Well, we have a charge and we have signaling power and potential. Think of the ATP that comes out of that redox or out of your mitochondria as a little toy top. And the redox molecules is a string that pulls the top and gets it spinning to charge our cell. Well, that doesn't last very long. So we're literally having to do that thousands of times a day with our redox molecules in order to maintain what we call homeostasis. Our body knows all of our vital signs and it's keeping us in that sweet spot. So we have a little stress, it knocks us out of our place. And we jump back, but then something other stressful runs us and creates higher heart rate creates just this stress that we're having to deal with. So, if we don't get back to homeostasis and let these stresses keep building, guess what? It's going to take us more energy and more redox to get our brains back to homeostasis. So, it's like the farther away you go from home, the more gas you're going to need to get back. But if you run out of gas, how do we make it all the way back? We don't. We keep our body in this state of acidity or alkalinity, which is doing nothing more than stealing your battery away. If your body gets very acidic, it just lost your charge on your cells. And as I said before, without signaling, nothing else really matters. So we have two brain systems that I want to speak about. The first one does the full QEEG. We have a dry cap, so it doesn't mess up the patient's hair and have to put the gel and everything in, which makes it super convenient. I have worked for several companies over the years, doing clinical studies to validate what their product or technology does in the brain. And so it's been very exciting. We can take this data, literally put it into a dozen different softwares and see different slices and dices of what's going on with the brain's neurology and how can we track new tissue growing and neuroplasticity versus just reorganizing the brain and making it more efficient. So these are basically 19 microphones that are just placed gently on the head. We don't have um, any input going into the brain. We're just listening and they're recording about 60,000 neural synapses every hundredth of a second. It is truly remarkable how we can then reconstruct this 3D image of the brain. And we can see things like brain trauma. Whenever you hit your head, your brain's going to bounce off the backside and then come right back to that point of impact at two different speeds. This is the shear effect that separates that gray and white matter and can determine the level of concussion. And so we can actually see trauma. With our reconstruction of the brain, we can literally take all these layers down and see how deep it goes. In this scenario, green is normal. Your red and yellow is inflammation. It's too fast processing. It's like being in a crowded room and I'm trying to block out all the noise. And then this impact was from the top because it came right to the bottom of the brain and then bounced back to the top. And so we see all that dark blue where that separation of those tissues happened. And so this is the coup counter coup. And so what we can do is we put all that information into the software that actually shows us these Broadman areas, I think it's 88 regions on both sides. And it tells us what the region was. So we know exactly what the issue was for the patient. And then we can see how many deviations away from normal are they. I have patients that are one or two deviations. That's a month worth of some of the therapies we do. And they're back right as rain. Okay. Other ones are 17 deviations because of the severity of their trauma, and that can take 2 or 3 years before I give them manageable hope of what it's going to take before these tissues actually heal, if they can heal, if they can repair. Your brain cells are the same cells you're going to have the rest of your life. The cool thing is when we're learning things and we're forever students, we're constantly growing new cells. Okay, so we can grow new ones, but they're not like the rest of our body that have a turnover rate. Your eyes are 2 days, your throat is 2 weeks, your tongue and gums are 8 days, your heart is 6 months. So if we start doing the right things, lifestyle, gut health, brain health, and all of these things, we're going to be able to make much more copies of that DNA and find a much cleaner one from way long ago before all these issues happen that you keep carrying along. So this really gives us the targeted areas, but we also can see over 250 networks in the brain, things like pain network. These are purple dots are all the Brodmann areas, and every network is kind of like a group chat, and they're all talking to each other. Well, when you see lines here, that means that somebody blocked that other person. So I'm assuming everybody gets the chat, but they don't. The more lines, the more dysregulation, and the more apt you are to have the symptoms of the network. And so this person has a lot of pain at night. During the day, it subsides. It's not so bad. Well, I can see exactly why, because that pain network has so much dysregulation in it. So we can target these areas, grow new tissue there, and also networks come right back online. We get abilities back. It's called a major breakthrough. Super exciting. There's so many. When we look at all the networks, um, we can see a hot mess of red. Red's 4 times or more too fast, and the dark blues are 4 times or more too slow. Okay, so the blues are always more concerning. We don't know if we can wake up a brain, but we can always calm down a brain. So we would present something like this, where again, where their daytime is relatively good, nighttime's a hot mess. After we do our therapies, we come back and objectively show where these things came back online, and we can eventually see these all clear. Now, we can further dissect and explain every aspect of their day, their night, and all the things that kind of make up why they do what they do. Okay, in this scenario, delta is way too high, gray is normal. So 4 or more deviations too high, no delta sleep. Okay, so the deep sleep is being disrupted. They might be in bed for 8 or 9 hours, but they're not getting the body repairing time that they need. The theta in the back of theta is REM sleep. This is when your brain remodels itself and your brain heals. This person does not get the REM sleep either. So that makes them very light sleeper and very slow to get up in the morning. The back of the brain here are fast brain waves. We're not supposed to use those at night. That creates anxiety. It creates ruminating. So they're sitting there and thinking, I'm so tired, but I just can't turn my brain off. Once we can target these areas and calm them down, also like, wow, I had the greatest night's sleep. Well, we can also see things like concussion. Now, this is the concussion index that all the professional sports use, teams use here in the US and the military. And it's to determine if they've had a concussion. Now, if they're not in the gray, they don't get to play or they don't get put back in the field. Now, that can happen because a firearm was discharged in the military. They got to get a hearing test because hearing test leads to cognitive decline. And it can create a bunch of problems if they're expecting to be able to hear something and they're not. And in the sports world, it's all TBIs. You get a brain concussion, you get hit, you fall on the ice, you knock your head, you have some sort of things you think, oh, I'm okay. Well, there could be an underlying damage that you're not detecting. And we can literally see in a scenario, this is almost a grade 4 concussion on this individual, anxiety, language, mood disorders, and a little bit of executive functioning, but that's not out of the gray. So we can see after our treatments, the red line was their post scan, and their concussion level was 0. So, and they're back playing again. Sometimes we can make that happen weeks before they were told how long they're going to have to sit out. They just need to objectively prove that it's been healed. And there's things that we can do to help the body heal much faster at a super accelerated rate where we don't have to wait so much. So why is that important? If you don't take care of that, your brain will decay. This is a concussion, an advanced concussion football player that didn't ever do therapy after they played. And 10 years later, this is how much the brain can degrade. So it's not about, oh, I don't think I did or I did. Well, know if you do or not, and then know things that we can do to actually grow more tissue and get your life and vitality back. So the first brain map I showed you, it was in the scenario that, let's say I'm a mechanic and I'm the only one allowed to touch the engine on this high-end car. Now the engine is on, but it's in park, and I can walk around, I can listen to the timing, I can listen to the airflow. Maybe the idle's a little bit too high. I can probably tweak and adjust a few things to make it really purr. And we would hope that if it was all dialed in, it would perform better on the road. But it's still giving me a static view of daytime, nighttime, what your brain does. And it gives us the GPS on exactly where things are out and where we can target and how we're going to go around and make all these corrections. But if we see warning signs in this map, there's kind of like a three-strike rule that we see, oh, you're pre-dementia. Okay, this gets any worse, you're going to start having symptoms. Well, we have another system that's equivalent for us getting in the car and going and taking it for an aggressive test drive on the track. And that's what I'm going to talk about next, because this has really unbelievably opened up. I mean, I've been doing this for decades, and we got this system about a year ago, and I didn't even know it existed. But it really lets us really evaluate the white matter and how well you're able to process and send information and do things subconsciously before you physically or consciously do it. And so that was just a realm that I never got that window before. And having this window, it's been unbelievable. And finally, the patients that have plateaued in care a certain amount, and then all of a sudden we see things enlighten us in this next scan that I'm going to share, and it gives us a new pathway of treatment, and then all of a sudden we got them better, and we stopped the seizures, we stopped the Alzheimer's, or the not being able to drive because they were cognitively not sharp enough. So we can show and see exactly what's going on. So this is called the neural peak system, and it's, I believe, coming to your area next couple weeks. David's on his way over here as we speak, and we'll be training him on this system and how we do it. So it's going to help us identify cognitive domains, your working memory, your focused memory, executive function, which is your short-term working memory, and recall, speed, accuracy, decision making, all of that, and just also TBI. Like I just mentioned, how bad was the TBI? How has it affected you neurologically? And when has it been recovered? Like when are you recovered and it's not present anymore? So we can track things over time. And a lot of times we can see if we had these scans before they had a head trauma, now we can really identify exactly what changed and where and how bad. But the dementia, this is neurodegenerative disorders. We can see when you're going to get it 15 years out, even if you don't have symptoms right now, based on cognitive performance. So let me share a little bit more. We do an event related potential test and an EEG. And we have this AI system that takes our hearing test, the ERP, and the EEG, and it combines it into an amazing report and analytics of exactly what's going on and why. Now, it's a wireless device. It's also um, doesn't have gel that's going to mess up somebody's hair. It has this simple one size fits all cap that gently lays on your head, and then these little it's almost like a gummy bear, but it has a microchip in it. And you plug that in the hole, and that's your signal that's much more accurate. This is next generation caps, and that's the signal that makes it much more accurate to be able to get all the data as I just mentioned. And so the first part of this is an audiometry hearing test. And many people are in denial, first of all, that they have hearing issues. And if they don't do something about it, they're going to have cognitive decline. Because here's the thing, you don't hear things for a bit, but your brain's putting it in there for you to make you believe you heard it. It's borrowing resources to do that. You might have a level of impairment that is the soft spoken words like O's and A's. So boat or foot, you're going to hear the beginning and the last um, letter, and your body's going to fill in the O for you because that's out of your hearing range. And it does that for a while until it doesn't. And then you don't hear it, so you don't even realize what you're not hearing. But there's been so much evidence that if that goes untreated, it's going to cause cognitive decline. And that is the bigger picture here. So that's the first part of the test. It'll find those deficits across the board. And each one of these markers, we have descriptions for this is what you're hearing at that range. And so if this is bad, you're not hearing X, Y, and Z. So it really makes the patient have aha moments. I mean, many of them have hearing aids. They've been through hearing tests, but nobody shared to them the context of what they're not supposed to hear at that level. And so this software then takes their loss and it corrects it all 100% across the board. So they hear perfect as long as the earplugs are still in their ears. And then we go into the evoked potential test where they have a remote control in their hand and they're shown two different tones, a high and a low. And when they hear the high one, they want to hit the button and they want to ignore the low one. Then it starts throwing oddball sounds in there and they got to ignore those too. So they're just going to go for that high pitch that they're focusing on, waiting on hearing, and then they're going to hit that button. And so at the end of all of this, this is what I see. And this was my like so fascinating. Like, I can't believe this existed and nobody shared this with me. We have a report that's going to give you 21 metrics, or 24 metrics actually, on whether you're in dementia or pre-dementia or whether you're okay. And this is on a little side note, here in the United States, this is the only system that the FDA cleared and that Medicare pays for to the tune of $960 a map to $1,200 a map, depending on what state they live in. So no other system will be covered by insurance here in the States except this one because it's the only one that was 100% valid objectively on whether they truly have dementia. The other ones had too many false negatives and things, and this was the only one approved. So here's what happens. You're sitting there, you hear a noise. That noise lights up your language Broadband areas in your brain to say, oh, there was a noise. And then we say, oh, it was a tone. I'm supposed to send that to the frontal cortex to decide what to do with it. So the first part of the test is a P50 test. That's telling us how much energy did it take to turn on. Did it turn on quick enough? And how much energy did it take to complete the task to send it to that frontal cortex? And so we get three metrics for each step, and there's 7 steps that could happen. So once that information comes to the frontal cortex, this is the executive center. It has your memory, your control of your decision making. And so it's saying, okay, that was a low tone. We're supposed to not hit that. So what it does is it lights up the different Broadband area that says a no-go response. This lights up and says, don't do it. Now, if it was an oddball sound, it goes to a different one that has to associate back to this place and then go back to the executive function. Now, if it was the right tune, they're just going to hit the button right away and get the go response, and that gets into that motor cortex. So these are all the different values in this test. We're going to see how much did each action take to turn it on, to complete the process, and how fast did it do that. That gives us all these metrics to whether you're having cognitive decline or not, because all of this happens before you consciously realize you're supposed to hit the button or not. So this is something that you can't fake. You can't try to be smart and try to not be smart. It's going to see it because it's a subconscious response to your stimuli, the stimuli that you hear, that you heard. Sorry. And so what it gives us is the how much, how long, and how much to complete the task. So here, all of the red markers are area where this individual is already in dementia. And the yellow ones or the orange ones, he's in pre-dementia, so he's almost there. But here's the thing, motor-wise, 100% accuracy on his button, and oh, let me go back, and 0.9% misfires, and the reaction time was well within the normal speed to do it. So this, ironically, was an 85-year-old male who came into the office with his wife, who refuses to get in the car with him because he's got dementia, and she doesn't want to drive. She doesn't trust him, and he's in complete denial. I am fine. I don't have dementia. So I'm like the referee, I guess. I should have wore my striped shirt. And so we do the test. I go over this first three lines with him and say, we see that you are 100% accurate, no false alarms, and the timing in which you did all that motor movement was completely normal. So he stands up, haha, I told you, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, you need to sit back down. Because subconsciously, before you hit that button, every one of these red areas, you didn't have enough energy to turn it on. So you had to borrow resources from other parts of your brain. Now, granted, we borrow too much resources, it can create a seizure. So we don't want to have to always be borrowing from the neighbor parts of our tissues. And you didn't have enough energy to complete it. So you had to borrow more energy on the back end. And so what's happening, and then you had made a few wrong decisions, self-corrected, 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 and then went to go or no go. So your brain was very busy in the timing between when you heard it and when you did it. Now, if I were driving and a car was about to T-bone me, ooh, my body would see it and reflexes would move before I consciously think, oh, there's a car. Okay, because I have reserve. His body is so busy trying to figure out a simple thing like send a noise to here or not that there is no reserve. He's borrowing everything to get the task done, and he's going to be like, boom, hit. I didn't even see it coming. Okay. And literally, he didn't because he didn't have any reserve to be adaptive and resilient and be responsive quickly. And so, the good news of the story was after some laser treatments, we do a class 4 laser on the brain. We targeted that vagus connection. And not only did his hearing improve 10%, but this was down to like two things that showed up out of balance. So we could turn things around if we get it before it's too late. Once it all burns out, it's going to go from imbalance to brain on fire, all lit up, and then it'll just all the potential will go away. So the other thing that this shares with us is something called peak alpha. Now, peak alpha refers to the maximum output of your alpha brain. So, how much of that reflex and how much do I have if I had to give a maximum output immediately? Where am I? Okay, so this is used for a lot of reasons. It can determine if you're in dementia, if you've had a brain trauma, if you're depressed. Okay, all of these types of scenarios can really diminish that peak alpha. You want that to be a nice high peak. If it's between 8 and 9, in the eights, you are considered dementia. Okay, 9 is considered normal. So I think it's 8.6 is the cutoff. So that's usually a slower or fatigued and aging brain. It's naturally going to come down into those levels. A 10 to 11 is a very relaxed, alert adult. Okay, that is what we consider our normal brainwave. 11 to 12, these are the high performers, people that are extreme athletes, people that really have the go, go, go mentality. In fact, the higher the IQ, you might be at 13 or 14. If you have 180 IQ, you're going to be 14 or 15. So it can determine how fast your brain can allocate and reallocate information throughout your brain. It determines our IQ, basically, how well we're moving blood around throughout of our brain. So the good news here too is over time and through neurofeedback therapy, especially that we do where we have patients be watching movies that's controlling whether they see the movie or not. It targets and grows tissue in those spots that give the most dysregulation in your brain. So, like, I went to occupational therapy for a long time, and they would move my legs and for me for a half an hour. It's like, oh, someday your brain will connect and figure out how to do this. I'm like, I doubt it. I'm wasting my time. This is ridiculous. It wasn't until we found that we could target brain tissue and do aggressive neurofeedback that all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I'm getting all my abilities back. It was insane. And we were limited to 20 minutes twice a week before the brain would just give you a headache and you had to stop and rest for a day or two. Now we have so many biohacks that we can just go, 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 go 4 hours a day, every day of the month, never get a headache. And we see people 2 years of therapy are now in 1 month because of how we can take advantage of these biohacks. So that severity is going to tell us a lot. As I mentioned, this is already FDA cleared and the only one that's approved to be able to understand and identify Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, depression, anxiety. We can even tell if somebody's faking it, wanting to get pain pills. Okay, we can use this. The drug companies use this technology to do massive scans to determine the effect of a drug on the brain. Okay, and then they've published many studies on that, and I'm going to be doing that soon as well with some other companies. So, what do we do about it? Well, neurofeedback training is amazing. And as I just mentioned, we were limited for so many years because it would cause inflammation in the brain. They just have to stop. Since we found ASEA, which is redox signaling molecules, this has been 10 years now. It was the major biohack that I've never been able to tap into this level before, where we're up to 4 hours a day, every day, never hit a wall. And we see things like concussions in 60 days go from a grade 4 almost to zero. Very, very exciting product. I could never go back. Okay, I've been teaching about redox molecules that our body makes and how we heal ourselves at that cellular level for so many years. They've done all these studies on, there's over 380,000 studies on redox molecules and how it's the root of healing. It's like your body makes these, it's like the vowels of the language so your cells can communicate. This study was done 5 different pathways, digestion to vascular to immune, inflammation, and hormone, all improved by 21 to 31% in just 60 days. Okay, they had a big study on that. They had 2 universities that showed glutathione increased by 40%, 55% if the cell's damaged, because your body naturally would be making a little more anyway. Well, it helps your body make even more. Think of it as like the workers in your body that are doing the work to activate things, turn things on and off, take things places, send messages. Then we had Redox Gold this year. This is 24 karat molecular gold that's driving those redox molecules down one gene pathway only, and it's called NRF2, and that's our pathway that deals with oxidative stress, inflammation, detoxing, and repair. And so this was amazing, 160% improvement with just a tiny T dab of that redox gold. I put it on the brainstem twice a day. I've done a study, which I'll share in a minute, brainstem health with that. When we talk about the cellular glutathione that it makes, it's 70% more glutathione in a healthy cell, 280% more glutathione in a compromised cell. Think of redox molecules as the firemen, and your antioxidants, like glutathione or SOD, they're the fire extinguisher. So if fire breaks out, the redox says, oh, a fire, activates that NRF2 gene, and all of a sudden, a fire extinguisher pops out of the machine. He grabs it, runs over there, puts the fire out. We're good. If you take a whole bunch of antioxidants, you don't change the redox, so you only still got the one fireman, and he only got 2 arms. I might be able to grab two, but I could take 100 of them in the room, and it's not going to help me put the fire out faster because there's only so much redox. Same thing with stem cells. They're amazing to give your body the ability to create a bunch of new tissues, but if you don't have redox, who's copying the DNA into the stem cell? So you're still limited. So upping the potential of your redox plays a huge role in your overall health. And that's done through diet, through lifestyle, and also through this supplement that we have. So I did a study a couple years ago where I had 55 people, never took this product before, and weren't allowed to do any therapies or no new products or no new therapy at all for 90 days. And they consumed 8 ounces. The change in the overall neurology was astonishing, 52%. That was absolutely mind blowing. We had people train their brain for 10 hours and get maybe 10, 25% of change in the neurology. As I mentioned, we can see trauma. Okay, so 52% positivity in the brain. This person hit their head in the back and it bounced off the front and came back again. So we can see where that injury was. But we put the whole means of that entire 55 people into one person. And this is what they all had in common before and after. This is how they do studies for mass studies. They want to see what was the things that they all had in common and how did that change over the means of the show. And here the gray is normal now. Before the green was normal, now it's gray. And you can see before, after on the right side of all their brains and before, after. It's cognition, it's visualization, it's memory, it's speed, accuracy, recall. All of that is improved just from the supplement alone. And to see the mean difference of almost a half a deviation change in brain's neurology, sometimes that would never change the rest of your life unless you're actively doing something aggressive to try to improve the function of your brain. It's going to just produce what it can and then keep waiting to recharge your cells at night. And if you're not sleeping well, you don't make up for loss of sleep on the weekend when you sleep all day. You're damaging your brain every time you're not getting good rest. So people really need to pay more attention to what it's going to take to get that good night's sleep. So I mentioned I did my own little study on the gold. We took a little pea-sized dab of this amazing gel and rubbed it right on the top of the neck where your brainstem, that soft spot is. And in 15 minutes, retook it. I mentioned before, it's much harder to wake up a blue brain than it is to calm down an inflamed brain. This change within 15 minutes was absolutely remarkable, and this was not just one person, this was on 6 people. Um, this is the white matter on the inside. You're not supposed to see any wires at all, okay? No lines is a healthy brain. The dark blue and the red in the same space, that's a concussion patient. It should be all blue or it should be all red, okay? Or it should be all yellow and red at this point because that's information flow, which means you ask them a simple question like, "What's your name?" And they got to think about the answer for a second before they reply. It should just be quickly. 15 minutes later, their entire brain cleared. They were present, they were more, alert, had a much deeper conversation. It was unbelievable on how fast it took all the distractions away. Here's a person that had a very healthy brain, unlike that last one. And again, doesn't matter how healthy your brain is, it got better. It's impossible for it not to work, by the way, because redox molecules that you're putting on topically here are the exact same ones that your cells make, so they're native to your body. It's not saying, "Hey, what are you? What do I need to do with you?" It's like, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be over there, there, and there. Go." So those molecules will take off and do it. This was the whole group looking at connection speeds between right and left brain, and it was very compromised. I guess it could be worse, but that was the whole group average. And then afterwards, everything across the board, everybody's brain gets better. We look at all the networks turned on, 250 networks turned on. We see a hot mess of lines. Afterwards, it's like their brain just came back online. It's like somebody went out into the garage after the storm and put all the fuses back on that fuse box. And all of a sudden, oh, power's back, lights are on, music's on, everything's back. Praise the Lord. Okay. That's what this does. Now, granted, it's going to last maybe 4 or 5 hours. When we do neurofeedback, we target those areas and grow tissue there to be actually permanent. Now, when we talk about these redox molecules, there's such a foundation of our ability to build on brain health. They are so important. You don't need a brain map to be consuming them and see the massive changes that's happening. But I want you to realize that these are the same exact molecules that come out of your mitochondria. And so your body builds sodium chloride with these molecules to be the fluids of your blood and in your body. We need to have that salt water. That's why they put saline on you in the hospital if you're dehydrated, because they got to get the fluids into you. Well, once it makes sodium chloride, it never demakes it. It uses it until it's gone. So what we've done with this product is against all the laws of physics, because hydrogen and oxygen are very unstable. It's a fleeting, they're gone. It's one electron. Okay, so it vanishes so fast. To be able to have two positive and two negative molecules in this bottle at the same time and they don't neutralize each other, that's physiologically impossible. It's like saying I put warm water and cold water into a cup and they're going to stay separate. You're like, Mark, that doesn't happen that way. So this is the first and only company that figured out how to do it. They did it with seven um, seven patents and 7,000 trade secrets to be able to not only stabilize it, it's stabilized for 2 years in any climate on the earth. They have everywhere around the earth is, I mean, there's already 40 something countries that are using or distributing this. It can be shipped into any country that's even not distributing it. And they keep tests of every batch. in a lab under the exact conditions of the region that they sent it to, and they're testing it every week for 2 years to make sure that that environment doesn't denature it faster or what have you. We have other talks that I've done on the science of this that will literally rock your world, but this is the fastest way to get your body back to homeostasis. As we introduce this into the body, it's charging your cells, giving you more resilience. It's giving you all the redox that you're not making anymore. We lose 1% per year. So if you're 60, you're making 40% of what you used to make when you were in your 20s. And so that's a big deal. And that's why we're aging so fastly. This will actually reverse the aging process. And for brain health, I used to think it was all about brain health because you're looking at, 3 mitochondria per cell in your gut and 2.5 million in the brain. Obviously, the brain's more important, but guess what? It's not. The gut determines everything. Your biome are the antennas that all your cells talk to get a weather report on whether I should fight or I can relax and enjoy a beautiful day here in southern Florida. And so, if your gut's healthy, I've just finished a whole 5 week series on gut health and brain connection. If your gut's healthy, your brain's just waiting to know what to do. Okay. And so, not to mention, 90% of your serotonin is created in your gut biome. So, that's what makes your brain happy. Okay. You can have fleeting moments where I think I'm happy, but it won't last unless we get that gut health right. And of course, our attitude is the other 50% of whether our genes are going to turn on and fight or not. But if we don't have good gut health, we don't have a good attitude. And guess what? If we don't have a good lifestyle, we don't have gut health or an attitude. And so it really does matter how we treat ourselves, what we put into our body, and how we honor this amazing biome that we create inside of us that literally is the signaling headquarters of our body. And we're so dependent on it. It was here before us, it'll be here after us. Bacteria is everywhere. We want to create a healthy bacteria because guess what? It produces a lot of redox for you. Eating actual foods that are real produce a lot of redox for you. Eating stuff that's processed steals it from you. So we get to decide what does our day look like. Okay, we're either going to do things that keep robbing it, robbing it, robbing it. I got nothing left at the end, or we're going to be doing things that help it and allow us to have reserve. So I actually have enough to get a good night's rest. What a concept! And I can wake up feeling amazing and refreshed and all of that. So these maps are great tools to identify, hey, where are we? What's going on specifically with you, and what kind of things can we do to help enhance that and truly bring you back to thriving and functioning well again? It also gives us ways of tracking it as we go to measure how much neurology is improved, how much physiology is improved, how much new tissue grew and where, and what would that mean to you? Because a lot of times they just want to do things for one reason, and your neurology might have a whole pecking order. Oh, I need this first before I'm going to let you have that. And so it's just a matter of being patient, understanding how the body works and working with it. And your brain is unbelievable. It has the ability to adapt and change to whatever kinds of influence you're giving it. It's a very influential part of our body, kind of like the Pied Piper. He's blowing his little flute, and all the mice follow him out of town. You can hear a brainwave sound, and your brain's like, "Oh, I can do that." It'll be right there, and it'll match you there. So there's a lot of amazing ways to find where your patterns are off and the things that we can do to help strengthen and stabilize all of that. So that's all I'm going to talk about. For that, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. I certainly appreciate your time sitting there, and I know it's late in the day and you've been studying all day, so I appreciate all of that.
Okay. Let's ask some questions, Mark.
Okay.
Hello. I have
Hi.
I'm a birth practitioner, and 3 years ago I delivered a baby boy with microcephaly and also lissencephaly.
Uh,
He's had his mum is incredible. She's said no to allopathic medicine. He's off all of the seizure meds, but
mm,
obviously he is not developing normally. He has a very small head. He has sometimes up to 20 seizures a day.
mm.
And I was wondering if there's any advice you could give me for his mum to basically do the
How
uncomfortable.
how old is he?
3.
He's 3. So we can brain map infants. Okay. We have tiny caps and all different size caps, but I would have to see the data. And you can have Rosalie do a brain map for her if she's willing to. I know she's saying, well, this isn't really allopathic either. I mean, it is, but I've worked in the hospital. They do these in the hospital for brain trauma patients. And so it's gold standard accepted if we're going to see what's going on with the neurology of the brain. Unfortunately, they might not have even looked. They might be have done the CAT scan and MRI, and they know
Oh
he's
no,
not bleeding out, and the MRI shows something, or he's
there
done a
was
Q.
he's done some very unusual things. So there was this
Okay,
amazing neurologist from Brazil called Dr. Hans, and he did this special scan to measure
okay.
waves he's missing, and basically gave him the frequency, the morning frequencies, the afternoon frequencies, to just basically fill in the gaps of where his brain waves are missing, and that really helped. And at 9 months, he finally opened his fists, because you know how newborns have closed fists,
Wow.
and he finally opened them
Yeah.
up. He can now pluck
Awesome.
guitar strings. You know that they're using the Doman
Okay.
method. I don't know if you know about the Doman method. They're using all sorts of alternative therapies, but she can never learn enough, this mother. So I will send her your way. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let me just say that I've been doing this for 30 years, and probably about 15 years ago, I was working with a family that adopts kids that were abandoned in the hospital because of birth defects. And they're in 8 countries around the world. Actually, she has 8 children, and each of her children run one of the countries. Well, once a year, they bring them all back to Colorado, and it's like a big family reunion, and everybody's there. They bring me in to map everybody and take care of all their kids, because they all end up with several that they don't get to adopt. Like they're an adoption agency, but they end up with like 5 or 6 kids themselves. And they gave me one that had a half a brain. And I'm like, really? Like, no, he was born with only a half a brain. And I'm like, oh, I just saw him walk in to me. He's pleasant little kid. He can't move his right arm. He can voluntarily move it. It'll stay wherever he leaves it, but he's got no physical movement in the right arm. And he only says he's 5 years old, and he only says about maybe 10 words. And he has about 200 seizures a day. And but he's pleasant, he's a happy child. So she pulls out her MRI, his MRI, and gives it to me, and I pull it up, and oh my goodness, half a cavity of nothing, but the brain shrunk, turned sideways, and tucked in the other half the cavity. So he still had a full brain. It just wasn't the normal size, and it was all still there. So we did neurofeedback training that night, one time, just an EEG, like CZ up. It's the most simple one that we could do, just to see how his body responds. The next morning, we're all sitting around the breakfast table. He's got 8 brothers and sisters, a big round table. And he sits down, and all of a sudden, he grabs his spoon and goes, "Look, mommy, I can move my arm." And like everybody just
Wow.
like jaw dropped and like I spilled everything all over the place. Like, what did you do? And I'm like, hey, it wasn't me. I just hit start. It's like he's been in there. He's been wanting to connect. He's been amazing for so long, and we just had to open the door. Like he just finally opened the door. I had another child who was 11 years old, never spoke before, and he wouldn't wear clothes, and he doesn't play with toys. He doesn't watch TV. His younger brother had Tourette's and ADHD, and he was being treated, and she'd have to bring the older one, but every time she turns her back, his clothes are off, and he's running to the parking lot and eating leaves off trees and things, in the parking lot. So she's like, "Oh, he's too far gone. We can't help him." Well, after the first month, the younger one was like off all of his meds, back in school, behaving great. Like she just couldn't believe it. So she asked me if I would try with this other child. And so he doesn't watch TV. So I put like Veggie Tales on. The room's pitch black, and only the cartoon is on. I was hiding in the corner with my gelled up wires. And mom brings him in, and she sits him down, and he just does this. And she looks at me like, "This is great." And so I'm like sneaking up like a cat behind him. And then I clip his ears and put it on top of his head. And he turns around. I hit the ground. I don't move. He didn't see me. He didn't pull him off. He turned right back around and watched. So I hook him up, I start the thing behind his back, and it wasn't a great signal. It was okay, but I wasn't going to dare mess with it because I had a signal. I was going to let it do its 20-minute thing. He gets up in 20 minutes and I take it off. He's a little like, "Why are you here? What's going on?" And then he just walks out of the room, walks all the way across my lobby and gets a glass of water. And the mom looks at me and starts crying. And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "I missed it. Like what?" And she's like, "He walked a straight line. He has never done that. He zigzags like Tigger all over the place, everywhere." And I'm like, "Wow, that's amazing." Now he could only say T and P. T means I'm hungry. P means I gotta go to the bathroom. So those are the two consonants that would come out of his mouth in 12 years. He goes home all day, nothing. Mom goes to tuck him into bed every night. She does this, he does this. She says, "Our Father who art in heaven," says the Lord's Prayer, and amen. And then he just goes quick to bed. He's always quick to go to bed. Well, not a peep out of him all day. She sits down, she does this. He goes, "Our Father who art in heaven, I'll be that in there. Keep on the will be done. Amen. Good night, mommy." And he falls asleep. She's like, "I was paralyzed for 3 hours. I couldn't get off his bed. My shirt was soaked. I was crying and crying, saying, I knew there was a perfect child in there all along, and nobody would believe me." And it was like unbelievable. Her family flew in from out of the country. They all just wanted to see me. And it's like, "Listen, it's not me." I appreciate that. Yes, we have an amazing space here for people to allow their healing to happen, but we're just hitting start and he needs a lot more of that therapy. Well, shoot, man, it wasn't long, a few months, and no longer wanting to be naked all the time, would play with toys, would have conversations with you, could talk to you. I mean, it was like I have seen thousands of patients over the years, and it's all about the breakthrough. That's what makes what we do worthwhile. It's why I wake up in the
Wow.
morning because people can have a breakthrough that will radically change the course of their life.
Thank you so much. I'll pass your details to the mother. Thank you very much. Amazing.
Yes, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Is this redox product, is it available?
Yes.
Yeah. No.
We all think it.
Yeah, we don't think
Yeah.
From Holland.
Mhm.
Yeah.
From Holland.
I will tell you that it is my alpha product. I take like probably 50 different vitamins a day because I've been doing it my whole life. I'm very into holistic eating and eating clean and it's like my life insurance, all my vitamins. And honestly, before 10 years ago, before I found this one, I really couldn't say I had a favorite. They're all important. That's why it makes it into my body every single day. So they're all important. Now, granted, some are probably, if I didn't have money to afford them all, I'd probably, certain ones I'd probably get rid of first. But once I found this and it made all the neuropathy in my hands and feet and my spine pain go away, and I just had a life with no limitations, it was like, unbelievable. If I go 24 hours without it, I'm like Cinderella. Literally fall apart and all of it comes back with a vengeance. So I have to drink a half a bottle a day personally. Everybody's kind of got their sweet spot, and most people aren't as fragile of me, but I've had a lot of traumas besides the ones I've told you of. I've been an adrenaline junkie most of my life. So I've had over 700 stitches and over 40 broken bones, and I've needed a lot of healing, and I've always healed really quick. Nothing compared to what I have. I could stop everything else, but I would never want to stop the redox because my body and the traumas and the things that we're all exposed to have stolen so much of my potential away. I used to be able to do so much more. If I don't have this, I mean, I still work half days, meaning 12 hours a day, and I could never do it if I didn't have this. I'd work 4-hour days and that'd be all I could ever handle. So it's amazing. You'll love it. I have over 300 episodes of podcasts that I teach on it. And I really just teach on how the body heals itself from any tissue, condition, symptom. And at the end of it all, it's redox from the inside of ourselves. But then when we can supplement it, we just give our body that much more potential.
Wow, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Thank
It's
you.
amazing.
Appreciate you.
It's amazing. It's amazing.